My family kicked me out because my sister falsely accused me of stealing her engagement ring. 3 years later, they discovered it in the garbage disposal. I never imagined I'd be telling this story, but here goes. I'm Elliot, 26 years old, and 3 years ago, my life was flipped upside down by a false charge made by my older sister, Gemma, 29. I grew up in a little Ohio town with my parents, John, 55M, and Lisa, 53F, and my sister, Gemma. We lived in a modest two-story house that my parents purchased when they first married. It was not fancy, but it was home. My father worked as a high school math teacher, and my mother was a nurse at the local hospital. They weren't wealthy, but they made sure we got all we needed growing up. Gemma and I were quite close. We'd spend hours playing in our backyard, climbing the ancient oak tree, and inventing complicated games. She was always the leader, making up the rules and plots, while I was content to follow along. As we grew older, however, things began to alter. Gemma was always an overachiever. She was the top of her class, captain of the debate team, and appeared to thrive in whatever she tried. In contrast, I was more laid back. I performed okay in school, but I was never as motivated as Gemma. As we approached our adolescence, this disparity began to erode our relationship. By the time Gemma left for college, we had grown apart. She attended a prominent university on a scholarship, whilst I stayed local and attended community college. I didn't know what I wanted to accomplish with my life, so I took a range of classes to figure it out. Gemma relocated to the city after graduating from college and began working at a large marketing agency. She'd return home for holidays and occasional weekends. Full of stories about her fascinating life and excellent profession, I couldn't help feeling inferior. In contrast, I was still living at home, working part-time at the local grocery shop, and trying to figure out my next step. Despite our differences, I always assumed Gemma and I were fine. We weren't as close as we had been, but I assumed it was just part of growing up. I had no idea how quickly everything might fall apart. Gemma and her boyfriend, Tom, 31M, were engaged 3 years ago. They had been dating for 2 years, and everyone was ecstatic. Tom was a lawyer from a wealthy family, and my parents idolized him. He proposed with a stunning diamond ring that had been in his family for generations. Gemma was overjoyed and couldn't stop showing it off to everyone. The engagement celebration was a large occasion. My parents brought what seemed like the entire town to our house to celebrate. I recall feeling a little out of place among the rich people Gemma and Tom had invited from the city. I remained close to my old high school pals who were still in town, feeling more at ease with them than with Gemma's sophisticated set. A month after the engagement, all hell broke out. It was Tuesday afternoon, and I had the day off work. I was in my room, playing video games and enjoying the quiet house. Gemma was visiting for a week, taking some time off work to begin arranging the wedding with our mother. I heard Gemma return home from a shopping trip with Mom. They were talking and laughing downstairs. I didn't think much about it and returned to my game. Around an hour later, I heard Gemma scream. I ran downstairs to check what was going on, and she accused me of taking her engagement ring. She explained that she took it off while doing dishes and left it on the kitchen counter. When she returned to grab it, it was gone. I was stunned and quickly denied taking it, but Gemma refused to listen. She kept shrieking that I was the only other one in the home, so it must have been me. She mentioned how I was always jealous of her success and how I probably wanted to sell the ring so I could finally move out and accomplish something with my life. Our parents arrived home in the midst of the chaos, and Gemma recounted her version of events. To my horror, they believed her wholeheartedly. My mother began to cry, questioning how I could have done such a thing to my own sister. My father merely looked at me with disappointment in his eyes. They began searching my room and turned everything upside down. They didn't find the ring, but they did discover some money I had saved from my job at the supermarket. It wasn't much, maybe a few hundred, but Gemma quickly picked up on it. claiming I must have sold the ring, and that's where the money came from. I tried to explain that I had been saving for months and was considering taking some classes at the local community college, but no one listened. The following few days were a nightmare. My parents and Gemma repeatedly pressed me to confess and return the ring. They threatened to contact the police if I did not come clean. I was afraid and felt entirely alone. Nobody in my family believed me, and I was treated like a criminal in my own home. I tried contacting several of my pals, but the majority of them had moved away after high school. The few who remained in town appeared unwilling to become engaged in family strife. I felt more alone than ever. After a week of relentless accusations and threats, my parents made a decision that would alter my life forever. They told me I needed to go. They said they couldn't trust me any longer and that I was putting shame on the family. They gave me 2 days to pack my belongings and leave. I was devastated. I had nowhere to go and didn't know what to do. My best buddy from high school, Ryan, to 6M, who had recently returned to town after serving in the army, offered to let me rest on his couch for a time. But I knew I couldn't stay there long. His apartment was small, and he was still getting back on his feet. I packed everything I could into a backpack and an old duffel bag, including clothes, books, my laptop, and a few memories from brighter times. As I was leaving, I noticed Gemma eyeing me from her old bedroom window. I thought I caught a glint of doubt in her eyes, but she quickly turned aside. Walking out of that house, the only one I'd ever known, was the most difficult thing I had ever done. I felt deceived and abandoned by those who were supposed to love me completely. The saddest part was that I had done nothing wrong. For the next 2 months, I alternated between Ryan's couch and cheap motels as I could afford them. I took on any odd jobs I could find to make ends meet. I worked as a dishwasher, dog walker, and even spent a few weeks on a construction job. It was a challenge, but I was determined to prove my innocence and succeed on my own. Eventually, I got a solid job at a warehouse on the outskirts of town. The job was hard, the hours were long, but the pay was consistent. The salary wasn't spectacular, but it allowed me to rent a modest room in a shared house with some other warehouse workers. I gradually began rebuilding my life, but the grief of what had happened never went away. I'd lie awake at night, repeating the events in my memory and wondering how they had gone so wrong. How could my family have turned against me so quickly? How could Gemma, who had grown up with me and knew me better than anyone else, believe I would do such a thing? I cut all communication with my family. They attempted to contact me several times in the beginning. My mother would leave heartfelt voicemails urging me to come home and make things right. My father sent a few text messages indicating we needed to discuss. Gemma did show up at the warehouse once, but I declined to see her. I couldn't bear to speak with them after what they had done. They were no longer my family. For 3 years. This was how I lived. I made new friends at work and in my shared home. We'd hang out after shifts, drink beer, and watch games. It wasn't the life I had envisioned for myself, but it was mine, and I had created it from scratch. I worked hard and was even promoted to shift supervisor at the warehouse. I started attending online classes to learn business management. I was slowly deciding what I wanted to accomplish with my life, but there was always a part of me that was outraged and wounded by what had occurred. I missed my previous life and family, but I couldn't forgive them for not believing me. Every holiday season was challenging. When I saw families shopping together or heard Christmas music, I felt a sense of sadness for what I had lost. Then, last week, I received an unexpected email from my father. The subject line simply stated, "We need to talk." The message was brief, stating that they needed to meet with me immediately and that it was regarding the ring incident. At first, I was tempted to dismiss it as I did with all of their previous attempts to reach me, but something made me hesitate. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe a small part of me still wanted a conclusion. After arguing with myself for hours, I decided to listen to them. I called my father, and what he said left me stunned. The ring had been found. Gemma had accidentally knocked it into the garbage disposal while doing the dishes. She only recognized this a few days ago when the disposal began making unusual noises, and they summoned a plumber to inspect it. My father claimed Gemma was upset when she understood what had transpired and that I had been telling the truth all along. He stated they all felt bad about what they had done to me and wanted to make things right. I hung up the phone, experiencing a swirl of emotions. On the one hand, I felt vindicated. I had always told the truth, and now everyone knew it. However, I was angry. I was outraged that it took 3 years to find out the truth, that I had missed so much time with my family, and that I had fought alone for so long when I had done nothing wrong. Now I'm at a crossroads. My family wants me to return home. They claim they want to make things right. Gemma has been phoning and messaging nonstop, asking for forgiveness, but I'm not certain I can forgive them. They pushed me out without hesitation, chose to think the worst of me, and left me to fend for myself for 3 years. Part of me wants to send them all to hell and let them deal with the shame of what they did to me, but another part of me misses my previous life and wonders whether there is a way to rebuild what we've lost. I do not know what to do. Should I give them an opportunity to make amends? Or should I continue living the life I've created for myself without them? I'm torn and could appreciate some outside insight on this whole situation. Update 1. It's been a week since my previous post, and a lot has happened. I'd want to thank everyone for their advice and support. It truly helped me go through my emotions and figure out what to do. After much debate, I chose to meet with my family. I believed I owed it to myself to confront them and seek closure, even if I wasn't convinced about reconciliation. We decided to meet in a neutral site, a modest coffee shop in the next town over. I chose it because it was far enough from our hometown that we wouldn't run across anyone we knew, yet close enough that anyone could get there without too much effort. I was quite nervous on the day of the meeting. I hadn't seen my family in 3 years, and I wasn't sure what to expect. I arrived at the coffee shop early and chose a table in the corner where we could enjoy some solitude. When they walked in, it was like a hit in the belly. Seeing them after 3 years was intense. My mother burst into tears the moment she saw me. She was older than I remembered, with more gray hair and creases around her eyes. My father appeared weary and tired, his shoulders drooping as if he were carrying a huge weight. Gemma couldn't look me in the eye. At first, she appeared smaller and less confident than the sister I recalled. We sat down, and for a time, no one knew what to say. They all started talking at once, with apologies falling out. My parents said they had failed as parents by not trusting me and kicking me out. They admitted that they had regretted their decision every day since, but pride and humiliation had prevented them from reaching out sooner. My father, who had always been a man of few words, talked for hours about how he had repeated those days in his head, trying to figure out how he could have been so blind. He claimed he had always prided himself on being fair and reasonable, but that emotion had clouded his judgment when it counted the most. My mother, through tears, told me how she had preserved my room exactly as I had left it, hoping that one day I would return. She stated she would wake up in the middle of the night thinking she had heard me coming home, only to realize what had transpired. Gemma burst into tears, stating she would never forgive herself for accusing me and damaging our relationship. She mentioned how she had always looked up to me when we were youngsters, even though I was younger. She admitted that she had been so preoccupied with her own life and troubles that she had lost sight of what was truly important. As they talked, memories of our childhood came flooding back. I remembered how Gemma stuck up for me when I was bullied in middle school. I reflected on all the times we had laughed together, exchanged secrets, and supported each other during difficult times. It made the betrayal hurt even more, but it also reminded me of the fantastic times we'd had. I heard everything they said, but I couldn't bring myself to forgive them just yet. The anguish and resentment from the previous 3 years were still too raw. I informed them that I needed time to comprehend things. They appeared to comprehend and did not push for more. My mom wanted to hug me before we went, but I backed away. I wasn't prepared for that kind of closeness yet. The hurt look on her face almost convinced me to change my decision, but I remained firm. I needed to protect myself emotionally. After the meeting, I returned to my apartment and carefully considered what I wanted. Did I want to go back to my previous life? Can I ever trust them again? Was it worth attempting to repair our relationship? I recognized that, while I miss having a family, I had also developed significantly in the previous 3 years. I had become self-sufficient, robust, and had created a life for myself from scratch. I wasn't the same person they'd kicked out 3 years before. I reflected about my warehouse work, my online education, and the friends made. I had worked hard to reach where I was, and I was pleased with what I had accomplished on my own. The thought of abandoning that and returning to my old life felt awful. At the same time, I couldn't deny that seeing my family had triggered a variety of feelings. Despite everything, I still loved and missed them. I wondered if I could have a relationship with them while still keeping my independence. After a few days of deliberation, I reached a decision. I called my parents and explained that, while I appreciated their apology, I was not yet ready to fully reconcile. I informed them that I needed more time and space to heal. I also established some boundaries. I indicated I was willing to maintain minimal contact with them, but I wasn't going back home or pretending nothing had occurred. I told them that if we were to continue our connection, it had to be on my terms. They expressed disappointment, but said they understood. They promised to respect my boundaries and allow me the time I needed. My mother asked if she might phone me once a week to check in, and I agreed, assuming it would be a nice approach to gradually re-establish trust. As for Gemma, I've decided to keep my distance for now. Her actions had affected me the most, and I wasn't ready to forgive her just yet. I told her I needed more time before I could consider having another relationship with her. She was upset, but explained that she understood and would wait until I was ready. It's been a rough week, with many emotional highs and lows. I've had moments when I question my decision, wondering if I'm being too harsh or if I'm passing up an opportunity to reunite with my family. But then I recall how quickly they turned on me, and I realize I'm doing the right thing by taking things slowly. I've also started researching therapeutic possibilities. Many of you suggested it in the comments, and I believe it would be beneficial to have a professional to speak with while I navigate this tricky situation. I've never been to therapy before, so I'm a little nervous, but I think it could be beneficial to me. For the time being, my primary focus is on my job and studies. I have a huge project coming up at work, and I'm determined not to let all of this family drama distract me from my goals. I am also thinking about moving to a better apartment. I've been saving, and I think I'm ready for a place of my own without roommates. Thank you again for your support. It's comforting to know that there are individuals out there who understand and care. Even if we've never met, I'll provide an update if anything substantial changes. Update 2. It's been almost a month since my last update, and I'd like to share some developments. I've been sticking to the boundaries I've established with my family. We've had a few phone calls and text messages, but nothing particularly intense. It's been okay, awkward at times, but not as painful as I expected. My parents have mostly respected my wishes. They check in every now and then, but they don't ask for more than I'm prepared to provide. I can tell they are working hard to rebuild trust, but it is a slow process. My mother calls once a week. As we promised, these calls were strained at first, with extended silences, but they are becoming easier. We usually discuss neutral issues, such as her employment at the hospital, the weather, and my online education. It's not much, but it's a beginning. My father has been sending me short emails, usually simply to check in or share something he thinks I'd be interested in. Last week, he forwarded me an article about a new business launching in our hometown. It was a little gesture, but it reminded me of how he would clip newspaper stories for me when I was younger. Gemma struggled with the barrier I'd created between us. She sent me many long emotional texts apologizing and pleading for the opportunity to make things right. I responded simply, stating that I need more time. It's difficult, but I'm holding firm on this. I know she's hurting, but I'm not prepared to deal with her feelings on top of mine. The big news is that I have started treatment. I discovered a counselor that specializes in family trauma, and we've had a few sessions thus far. It has been difficult to bring up all of the grief from the past, but I believe it is helping. My therapist is assisting me in resolving my anger and trust issues, as well as providing me with strategies for setting good boundaries. In our last session, we discussed how the incident with the ring was more than just the accusation, but also years of feeling like I didn't measure up to Gemma's accomplishments. It's made me recognize that there were difficulties in our family dynamic long before the ring incident, and that healing will require addressing those as well. One unanticipated result of all of this is that I've become closer to my pals, particularly Ryan. They've been extremely supportive throughout the entire ordeal. Ryan even offered to accompany me to any future family meetings for moral support. It's taught me that family is more than just blood. It's about who supports you when things go rough. Work has been a welcome distraction. I've poured myself into my career and even received a modest promotion. I'm now in charge of inventory management for my shift, which means additional responsibility and a minor pay increase. It is nice to have something pleasant to focus on. In terms of my living situation, I've decided to stay where I am for the time being. It's not much, but it's mine and symbolizes the independence I've worked so hard for. My parents offered to help me find a better place, but I declined. I have to do this on my own. However, I began to carefully consider choices for furthering my studies. A state institution, located approximately an hour distant, provides night classes. I am considering applying to their business program. It would be a significant move, but I believe I'm prepared for it. Overall, I'm taking it one day at a time. Certain days are harder than others. There are times when I mourn our easy connection as a family, but then I recall how fast they turned on me, and I realize I can't rush this process. My therapist thinks it's good to have mixed feelings about everything. She encourages me to be patient with myself and not feel obligated to forgive before I'm ready. We're working on techniques for dealing with upcoming family gatherings and holidays, which are making me more apprehensive than I'd like to admit. For the time being, my priorities are recovering and creating a life I can be proud of, with or without my family. It's not easy, but I'm positive about the future. I'm learning that it's all right to put myself first, and that creating boundaries does not make me a horrible person. Thank you for your continuing support. Your comments and messages have provided me with strength during this process. It's comforting to know I'm not alone in coping with familial issues like these. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my original post, so I thought it was time for a last update. A lot has changed during the last few months. The biggest news is that I've decided to relocate to a different place in search of a new employment opportunity. It's a significant advancement in my profession, and I'm looking forward to the new opportunities. The job is with a logistics company, and the work is comparable to what I did at the warehouse, but on a much larger size. It's a management role, which I've been working toward for a while. The income is much higher than what I was making previously, and it includes benefits such as health insurance and a 401k plan. Before making this decision, I had a lengthy conversation with my therapist. We talked about how this move will influence my healing process and my relationship with my family. Finally, we agreed that this could be a good thing for me, an opportunity to fully stand on my own 2 feet and identify myself outside of the family drama. I informed my parents about the transfer last week. They were astonished and disappointed, yet they expressed their understanding. My mother cried a little, stating she had hoped we'd have more time to restore our relationship before my departure. My father was more stoic, but I could see he was disappointed too. They were both concerned about me being alone in a strange place, but I told them that I'd be okay. Gemma took it the hardest after I told her. She showed up unannounced to my flat, pleading with me not to go. She admitted that she felt like she was losing me all over again. It was a challenging conversation, but I held my ground. I informed her that this was something I needed to do for myself and that our relationship was not in a position where her opinion could influence my decision. Our relationship is improving, but it is not perfect. We've enjoyed several family dinners in recent months. They've been uncomfortable and awkward at times, but we're gradually learning to be around each other again. Trust is still a major issue. I sometimes question their motives, wondering if they truly believe what they say, or if they are simply attempting to relieve their guilt. My therapist has been crucial throughout this. She has helped me analyze my emotions and create boundaries. She has emphasized that forgiveness does not imply forgetting or pretending that the trauma never happened. It's about letting go of my anger in order to find peace of mind. I've taken that to heart. While I don't believe I'll ever forget what happened, I'm attempting to forgive my family not for their sake, but for mine. It was hard to carry around all of my anger and bitterness, and I'm ready to let it go. As I prepare for this relocation, I've been thinking about everything that has transpired. 3 years ago, I thought my life was finished. I'd lost everything, including everyone I cared about, but now I see how much I've learned from that experience. I'm stronger, more independent, and have a better understanding of my own worth than I ever had. I don't know what the future holds for me and my family. We intend to stay in touch once I relocate, with weekly phone calls and visits during the holidays. It's a start, perhaps. With time and distance, we will be able to create something new. For the time being, my attention is focused on the future. I'm excited about my new work, the new city, and the opportunities that await me. I've started looking for apartments online and researching the region where I'll be residing. It's a mix of excitement and trepidation, but I'm largely looking forward to this next chapter in my life. Whatever happens to my family, I'm confident I'll be okay. I've shown to myself that I can deal with whatever life throws at me, and I've learned the value of surrounding myself with people that believe in and support me, whether they're related or not. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. I gave my sister-in-law a pregnancy book, unknowingly exposing her affair with my husband's friend. Now, the family's in chaos. We know each other since our husbands Charlie, to 6M, sister-in-law, Cheryl, to 8F, and I, to 6F attended high school together. Charlie and I were in the same year, and were sweethearts from high school. We began dating our sophomore year and have been together ever since. With Cheryl, things have always been different. She's always despised me. Hence I would want to say we were high school nemesis, as the sentiment was reciprocal. She was a senior, 2 years older than us, yet that didn't stop her from being absolutely rude to me. She was a vicious bully in high school, and regrettably, not much has changed since then. Only I could stand up to her back in high school. Everyone else was terrified since Cheryl and her buddies were infamous for mistreating anyone they came across. Some people even moved schools because of their terrible deeds or spreading of tales. They were that horrible. I am not exaggerating. I never feared her, even before Charlie and I began dating. I had always been acquainted with her brother. Cheryl didn't seem like this undefeatable entity to me, as he and I had been great friends, and I often stayed out at his house. She seemed like any other child. That's how everyone ought to have seen her, in my opinion. But high school can be weird. Still, I wasn't scared of Cheryl. Once I started dating Charlie, I became even more bold. She probably felt powerless over me, even as a senior, and this disturbed her. She once did something truly terrible to me. As usual, one morning, upon opening my locker, dead fish and a lot of fish water dropped on me. Head to toe, I was covered in nasty, sticky slime. I had to go home since I was so offended, and it was embarrassing and demoralizing. Though I couldn't prove Cheryl was behind it, I felt it had to be her. We had a severe verbal argument in the cafeteria the day before. I labeled her a brain-dead zombie in front of her friends, some of whom even laughed. She did this to me since she couldn't let that go. Charlie felt it had to be his sister too, and their argument turned out really intense. He managed to convince her to back off, even though he could not get her to apologize to me. Though Charlie and I have been together for years, Cheryl and I never spoke once that incident occurred. But once Charlie and I got married last year, my in-laws informed Cheryl and me that since we were now family, we had to try more to get along. Some nosy relatives had been questioning our lack of communication or simply glancing at each other during family events, which embarrassed them. Having gone far from high school, I was ready to let the past pass. I agreed to be polite. Cheryl and I shook hands like grown-ups. Though we chose to be friendly at family functions rather than avoid one another, we were not going to be best friends overnight. Things appeared to be going good. A year ago, we would say hi and then go on whenever we ran across each other. We had left the bad blood behind us, I assumed, but then she became cruel once more. She showed up empty-handed on my birthday some few months earlier, which was okay. She then told me she was actually teaching me cooking classes and emailed me an online program she had bought at the party itself, while I was opening everyone's gifts. She said it was meant to be a joke, but nobody else laughed, and I didn't either. For background, I had done all the cooking for the day alone, hence, it was quite nasty. I have always loved working in the kitchen and experimenting, even though I am not a professional chef. Since childhood, cooking has been a pastime of mine. Her comment she was going to give me cooking lessons was quite nasty, right after she had eaten a whole dinner I had made. As Charlie had pointed out, everyone knew I produced everything. I took it to heart since I had worked hard and woke up at 6:30 a.m. to make sure everything was perfect. No one truly laughed even once. Once she explained it as a joke, she persisted. Even though several people laughed merely to let her drop it, she kept insisting she was kidding. But she really thought I should have culinary classes, since everything she had eaten that day made her feel sick, and she kept saying she might throw up at any time. She also made jokes on how everyone should clear the path to the bathroom should she have to barf. She was truly approaching my last nerve. At the end of the evening, I felt relief when she left. She didn't even bother bidding farewell, spending the whole day cracking jokes at the expense of my cooking abilities, which, by the way, aren't particularly horrible. Charlie and everyone else told me the food was fantastic. Hence I have no idea what she was talking about. To be honest, I had begun to believe she might be a decent human being, but after my birthday, I chose to resume neglect of her. She obviously still lived in her high school mean girl form, and someone like her had no right to be friendly with me. Cheryl had her birthday last week. She had to invite me, even if we are not getting along, since I asked her to my party. Charlie traveling without me would have been strange. Hence she invited me in order to maintain family peace. That proved to be rather a blunder. I chose to let her taste her own medication. Based on a few weeks-old overheard talk, I handed her the book What to Expect When You're Expecting. For background, Cheryl came up to our place 3 weeks ago. She insisted on talking to Charlie in private and appeared depressed. She didn't realize I was standing immediately outside listening in on their conversation. I left the room to let them chat in the living room, though I knew it wasn't moral. I was intrigued and wanted to listen in so Charlie could cover for me when she left. Cheryl was pregnant, for what I understood, but she was truly concerned, as she felt unprepared to be pregnant. She had come to consult her brother. Charlie advised her to talk to her spouse, even if she felt unprepared. Given that the pregnancy was early, they may discuss ending it, should she still feel unprepared. He reasoned that chatting to her husband could allow her to relax and take better control of the circumstances. Cheryl left after briefly consoling her. I told Charlie what I had overheard as she left. We both agreed she had been behaving oddly. She appeared strange coming to us instead of her husband, even if she wasn't ready for a baby. She said some things that nearly sounded like she needed Charlie's assistance in covertly ending the pregnancy. But he wasn't ready to engage in such dishonest behavior. He thought her husband ought to know before any decisions were taken. Though ultimately, the woman's decision is hers, we felt her spouse at least deserved to be included in the conversation. Given she was married, we had not heard anything else regarding her pregnancy since that day. Still, I decided to pull a small practical joke on her and handed her that book. Fortunately, she did not unwrap the gifts in front of every visitor at the party, yet it made no difference, since the book truly got her into trouble. Her husband might thus eventually find himself leaving her. She called me in tears the day after her birthday, stating I had destroyed her life and charged me with purposefully undermining her marriage. What she was talking about eluded me. She was so enraged and was screaming at me, so I couldn't even get her to clarify what was happening. She hung up silently, done without further word. Following that phone chat, my in-laws got in touch and reported exactly what had happened. She apparently had been unwrapping all of her gifts with her husband, and then that book surfaced. I had even left a note stating that Charlie and I wished to congratulate her and fixed it to the book. She hadn't told anyone yet about the pregnancy, but I wanted to play about with her the way she had done on my birthday. I had no clue it would have such dire results. She could not have become pregnant by her spouse, since he was sterile. This was unknown to her. She apparently may have been cheating now, and her spouse had already shown suspicion. That book served to validate his misgivings, though none of the family members know for sure whether she had been cheating or not. Let's be honest, she most certainly wasn't biologically incapable of having children. In any case, that is not my line of work. All I know is she had come to Charlie thinking he would assist her covertly in ending the pregnancy. Now we know why she wanted to keep it a secret and why she was so queasy when she spoke with him. She cannot let that happen if she wanted to end the pregnancy without her husband knowing, since she is a homemaker and everything she spends might be followed by him. Even pulling money would be suspect, as it would be a large sum that would beg problems. Cheryl made a great effort to persuade her husband that I was merely teasing and that nothing was happening. He disagreed when she claimed the book was only a hoax, unless there was some truth to it. He doubted Charlie and I would pull such a joke. He then requested Cheryl to leave, and today she lives with her parents. My in-laws asked me to talk to her husband and persuade him that I had only handed her the book to play about with, given his suspicions of her adultery. They believed I might get him to approach her and fix things. Her fidelity now begged additional questions. I disagree, since they think I should not have done what I did and that I'm at blame. For the past week, my in-laws and I have been at conflict, given her behavior at my birthday celebration. I believe I was justified in what I did. I don't think I should accept the fall for this, as I had no idea it would cause so much trouble. She most certainly should have been faithful to her husband if she wanted peace in her marriage. To hold me responsible for it is unfair. Charlie has the same sentiment, though he believes the present was a little excessive, given the events of my birthday celebration. He does not advise me to apologize to Cheryl or even talk to her husband about any of this, saying we should resolve things since her marriage is in jeopardy. My in-laws keep fighting with us. They believe that should we fail to persuade her spouse that this was only a joke, the family may suffer from divorce. She most certainly was cheating, though if she was pregnant when she spoke with Charlie and her husband is sterile, should that be the case, we want no involvement whatsoever or defense of her. Apart from that, the book was only vengeance for the jokes she cracked at my birthday. I had no clue it would result in anything like this. I have nothing to be guilty over. It is not like I did it on intention. Still, they all seem to be behaving as though I'm the villain, the mastermind behind a sinister scheme meant to wipe her off target or otherwise. It's very strange. Suddenly, I'm questioning my choices. I kindly sent a pregnancy book as a birthday present to my sister-in-law. Update 1. Hi. So, it's been 2 weeks since I handed Cheryl that book, and up until now, we have avoided talking to her husband. From what we know, she had been cheating on her husband with another man. Hence, going forward, we will also keep to that, though I'm not sure specifically. I believe it's someone from high school. Worse, I believe it's someone from Charlie's acquaintance group. Since a few days ago, we spoke more of an argument on the phone with Cheryl. She stated it was quite unjust that she was being held accountable for all of this, but Charlie's friend was equally culpable. However, he wasn't getting any criticism and was even unwilling to defend her, though we don't know exactly who she's referring to. Charlie has quite a few married pals from high school. That's not really our main concern. Managing my in-laws has proved somewhat challenging. I don't believe they have done it yet. They insist I should chat to her spouse before he files for divorce. He keeps telling he'll do it, but if he truly wants to split, he should have done it. Now, what he is waiting for is unknown to me. Anyway, they believe they still have time and that if I only talk to him, I could be able to persuade him not to leave her by stating I was only doing a practical joke. I have nothing to do with all of this drama. Hence I refuse to allow myself to get caught in it. Though they have been making it somewhat challenging for us, I simply want to back off and relax. Thus, yesterday, we had to make a really difficult choice and ultimately block all three of them since they were slightly disturbing us. We can't keep talking to them, trying to help them to grasp where we are coming from. Over 2 weeks have passed. She was truly a bully to me in high school, yet many of the people in the comments on my first post felt it was unacceptable of me to do what I did. She had been cheating. Hence I doubt I have to feel guilty about what I did. Still, folks are free to disagree with me in this free nation. Update 2. Hi, 3 days have passed since our last report, and at last we were able to identify the person she had been having the affair with. Charlie's friend she mentioned turned out to be among his closest pals. This surprised me somewhat, a bit, because his family was acting somewhat irrationally. Charlie had been complaining to his pals about how challenging things had been for him the past 2 weeks. I suppose his pal chose to come clean as he couldn't tolerate it anymore. He called Charlie and told him he had been seeing Cheryl in an affair. Apparently, all of this began roughly 1 year ago, just around our wedding's time. For us, it was really startling, and we are still trying to understand it. Charlie is quite close to every one of his buddies. Hence we never expected a betrayal like this. From what we have seen, this guy, who has been married for 3 years, and his wife seem to be truly in love. I personally know the woman. She talks endlessly about her husband. Right now, I just feel somewhat sorry for her. We decided straight away to cut him off, and right now we are not telling anyone since we do not want to discredit him, but we will most certainly not be entertaining this going forward. We even told him to tell his wife straightforward, since she is the one who really needs to know the truth. Nobody should ever have to go through what this is like. He also supplied us with evidence of Cheryl cheating on her spouse alongside him. We have come to the conclusion that at least nothing good would come of it if we allowed ourselves to be pulled into this play. Hence our last call is keeping them blocked. To what we know, they have not discussed this with anyone else. Everyone still believes we get along well with my in-laws, and that Charlie's relatives know nothing about the turmoil underway behind the scene. Given the circumstances, which would be somewhat embarrassing for the family, I'm betting they are keeping things under wraps in order to protect their name, though I suppose it's a surface motivation. I value their great concern for their perceived image. We don't want to deal with other people right now, and it's helping us keep everything secret as it is. We have sufficient on our plates. Charlie's cousin is getting married in a few weeks. Hence, they will have to go to that wedding. We're not sure whether my in-laws or Cheryl will be there, given the present circumstances, but if they decide to go, boy, that will be quite strange for everyone concerned. Update 3. Hey, practically 2 months after my last update is here. Not truly intriguing events occurred in these previous 2 months. We sort of forgot about my in-laws once we cut them off. Their end also lacked news. Hence, they did not try to get in touch with us. We thought perhaps Cheryl and her husband had been able to sort things out, as neither a pregnancy announcement nor a divorce announcement was made. Good for them then, I suppose. Charlie and I know that adultery never stays secret. Thus we really don't care about what's happening in their marriage. When her husband finds out the truth, she will most certainly receive what she deserves. Regarding the pregnancy, I suppose she stopped it some way. In any case, we didn't bother ourselves with it and kept to our own business, as whatever happened is not of importance to us. That was till we visited his family at his cousin's wedding some few days ago, including Cheryl's spouse and my in-laws. All of them were present. Once we arrived, we acted as though the others did not exist and neglected even greeting each other. Clearly, the rest of the family noticed it right away. People began posing all kinds of inquiries to us, though they attempted to be subdued about it. We knew they were gathering gossip, but we simply tried to keep to ourselves so nobody would disturb us. We did not entertain anyone. Cheryl, on the other hand, followed a different strategy. She chose to blab her mouth off. Even though we knew the facts, we were ready to put up with her, since we were 3 days at the hotel and it was just a matter of time till we returned home. But she began to say such terrible things about us that we had to confront her about it. Sadly, that resulted in a somewhat public confrontation between our families during the rehearsal dinner. It was someone else's wedding, hence I regretted, as Charlie and his cousin got along well. Now, one of the events was totally destroyed thanks to us. Naturally, following such a spectacle, we had to leave before the wedding even started, since we couldn't stay much longer. We have since apologized multiple times to his cousin. She has indicated she is cool with it, but we still feel quite horrible about what happened. Cheryl and my in-laws, on the other hand, were really in charge of generating all of this turmoil, yet they hardly bothered to apologize to Charlie's cousin. At least we departed of our own will. The other family members practically urged them to go after we departed. Serves them right. They would do this kind of shame. It was pretty fulfilling for both of us when Charlie's cousin told him about it the day before her wedding. As we were phoning her apologies, Cheryl had been telling all the family and everyone who would listen that we had tried to destroy her marriage by lying about her adultery, therefore leading us to a fight in the first place. She said we failed in trying to undermine her marriage. Clearly, that was untrue, since, as we indicated, her marriage life is not something we give much thought to. Choosing to live with a lady like her husband had shown how dumb he was. We were even ready to let that slip since we were attending someone else's wedding and we wanted to avoid starting a scene. She then began asserting, though, that we were the ones having an open marriage and that I wanted to get close to her husband, which explained why I'd always been so envious of her. We couldn't live with that. We resolved to face her. Then, I mentioned all the evidence, the screenshots we had gotten from Charlie's friend, which I had been saving to myself for so long on the evening of the rehearsal dinner. Charlie and I now felt, nonetheless, that it was at last time to defend ourselves. She could not simply say anything she pleased and get away with it. Her husband can no longer ignore reality, since he at last knows it. His call is whether or not he takes the correct decision for himself and leaves her. At least now there will be no more questioning of us. At least we left on our own with courtesy, avoiding being thrown out as others were, though we are now attempting to move over it. It was just a really awful few days. The whole family knows Cheryl's type of person she is. Thus I just feel sympathy for her husband as he decided to mend things with her, even though it was useless. I truly hope he gets the bravery to escape. Should he decide to remain with her, then he just has absolutely no decency or self-respect. We eventually decided to go ahead and sabotage her marriage, as she had been accusing us of for so long. She will now have to pay for trying to bully us. How she planned to get away with all of this is unknown. Since high school, Charlie and I have literally been standing up to Mom. I believe we have made it really evident that we are not scared of her. We were not thus going to back down either. Right now, she ought to have known that. Update 4. Consequently, it is happening. 2 weeks have passed since our return from Charlie's cousin's wedding, and today I at last heard from a couple of cousins. Cheryl wrote about her and her husband divorcing. She said that it was a mutual decision to split ways and urged everyone to honor their privacy during this trying period. What a weight of lies this baggage carries. She's behaving as though people weren't present at the wedding and, like her entire family, unaware of what actually happened and the real reason they're divorcing. Hence, I'm not sure why she's acting like we all already know. Hence, we will definitely be honoring her privacy. No one has to ask her what happened. The talk began when Charlie told some of his pals. Thus even her friends have learned about it. We regret nothing about what we did. She had been spewing so much garbage about us in the past that we hardly need to feel guilty about what we did or regret her. Should she go low, we will go lower as well, period. She has always been a bully. Thus we believe we did the correct thing, as someone needed her down a peg. We are happy to be the ones doing that. If that makes some people view us as the bad guys, that is okay with us. For example, my in-laws have chosen to totally cut us off from their life. They even had their attorney get in touch with Charlie to let him know they had opted to avoid us and most likely would cut us off from the inheritance as well. As like we were going to learn that and start begging for pardon right away. That is not going to transpire. We are not money-based sellouts that one could purchase. Besides, since Cheryl hasn't worked since she graduated and has been depending on either her parents or her husband, they should most likely retain all their money to themselves, presumably for the rest of their lifetime. Thus, yes, they may keep their money and Cheryl with herself by all means. We behaved what we believe to be right. We are not going to act as though we are sorry for it right now. Charlie and I are quite happy with our life. We have no interest in anyone else. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.